idea was to start off by giving you all an exam. Some of you are relatively recently presumably graduated from school, and those of you who are older, I'm sure, just yearn to return to the classroom. But then a funny thing happened. Barbara Keneally gave away most of my answers. In any event, I'm going to proceed undaunted, and if you are able to answer the questions in advance, so much the better, really. What I wanted to do was, in effect, go through a set of facts and some information that will be relevant in viewing the budget summit that is supposed to take place next week. It's been announced. The details are still not very clear, but it's an attempt, I think, by the administration to try to deal with what is a fundamentally very difficult problem, which is, in the near term, economic imperatives say, cut taxes, spend more, increase deficits to stimulate the economy. In the long term, we face very serious projected deficits. So the opposite imperative comes into play then. In order to get support early on for the stimulus package and secure the votes of some members of Congress, it was important to emphasize that the second issue won't be forgotten. So let's move directly into the facts that are relevant to that and ask the first question on the exam. Which adjective best describes the magnitude of the increases in Social Security spending on the overall federal budget? How big a problem is it really? Well, as with any examination, you need to have some facts in order to begin to answer the question. I begin with a couple of historical examples of periods during which the cost of Social Security, measured as a share of GDP, actually went up by amounts not terribly dissimilar to the amounts that it is projected to go up in the future. But there is a key difference. The past increases occurred over a much briefer period of time than that over which the next increase in the cost of Social Security is going to occur. And we didn't really notice it back then. It was something that we took in stride, dealt with as a nation really quite easily. Furthermore, back then, everybody recognized that the baby boomers were coming and there would be a further increase in how much we spend on Social Security. But after the baby boomers retire, the projected spending on Social Security as a share of GDP wiggles around at about the same level as it's going to reach in the middle of the fourth decade of this century. A little over 6 percentage points of GDP. In fact, over the next 20 years or so following that period, the costs trend down a bit, and then later in the century, according to current projections, they trend up a bit. But at the end of the 75-year projection period, they're almost smack on where they were at 2036. So the answer to this question is that from a fiscal standpoint, the rising cost of Social Security is a small problem. To treat it as a major fiscal challenge is simply to misrepresent the reality of based on the best information that we have available. That information comes from two sources, from projections of the Congressional Budget Office and from projections prepared by the Social Security actuaries. So I'm sure you all got that question correct. We'll go on to question 2. How do U.S. benefits compare with those of other major developed industrial nations? That's an interesting issue to have a perspective on. because it gives us some background for perspective. Are we higher, lower, or about the same as they are? Well, here are some key numbers. These are taken from a very, very careful comparative study done by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. The name of it is down there at the bottom of the chart, Pensions at a Glance, done 4 years ago, and nothing better exists right now. So among 30 other rich nations, we're not smack at the bottom in terms of benefit levels, but we're close. What do I mean by benefit levels? The same thing OECD does. What they report are replacement rates, the ratio of benefits paid to the average earnings that workers have received. The bottom set of numbers isn't a ranking, it's a ratio of what our replacement rates are as a percentage of the OECD average. And again, they're somewhere between a little under 3/5 and a little over 2/3 of the average of other OECD nations. Now, I want to hasten to add, some of those other OECD nations are in very deep financial difficulties and are going to need to cut back on their pensions significantly. But anybody who tells you that benefit payments in the United States are high compared to those of other nations is telling you a falsehood. At the very bottom of this chart is the approximate average replacement rate for U.S. Workers. If you're a low earner, the replacement rate is significantly higher. If you're a high earner, it's significantly lower. And one thing that is important to recognize is that under current law, those replacement rates will trend down because there are still benefit cuts to be implemented that were enacted, hard to believe, 26 years ago in 1983, but not yet fully implemented. What you might call Social Security take-home pay, that is the cash that people can spend, is lower than this and is going to go down more than would be suggested by the legislative changes. And the reason for that is that before an elderly or a disabled person receives their Social Security check, subtracted from that is the premium for Part B of Medicare, the physicians and equipment part of Part B. And those costs have been and are projected to continue to rise faster than income or Social Security benefits. And for that reason, it subtracts still more and means that replacement rates are lower than this if you're looking at take-home pay and are falling, will fall in the future. So this is the answer to this question, and I'll move on to the next. How does Social Security benefit, the increase in the cost of Social Security, compare with the projected increase of the cost of Medicare and Medicaid? And Barbara gave you that answer in general terms, and here are the key numbers. The bottom line is the bottom line of this chart, which is that the projected increases in the cost of Medicare and Medicaid over the next 40 years is on the order of 4 to 5 times what it is for Social Security as a share of GDP. These estimates come from CBO. They are a downward revision from estimates that CBO had released 2 years earlier. Actually, 2 years earlier, CBO had released 3 distinct estimates, 2 of which nobody took seriously, and the third of which was the one that was commonly used, the highest. And these are downward revisions from those projections.